Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This is Tim Warren. I'm your host, and this is the It's All Just Marketing podcast. Today I have Eric Kelly. You're our guest, and you lead the technical and engineering team here at Helium SEO.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been quite a journey over the last 5 years. So growing from about 8 people sitting in the back of that little office to an expansive team, new office, new members every day. It's quite the change.
It is cool to remember, think back on the little tiny, 500 square foot office we started in, where we had great people, great ideas. We didn't pay very well, and we had big dreams. But it's fun to see where we've gone. Where we are today.
Joining with that view of growing with the company, seeing everyone. I think starting with such a tight knit group, someone who you can trust and really build, and I mean working with you, working with Paul, the knowledge that just the team provides is humongous. So.
Man, it's been awesome. Loved working together. Well, so Eric, you run the technical team and the engineering team at Helium. And so for those listening who aren't familiar or don't know, Helium does things uniquely where we actually, instead of having account people who do the whole SEO process, we break the whole process into their individual roles and functions. And so then we have individual people who do just one role. So we have just link builders and just on-page ops and just content specialists and just backend. And so we take the whole SEO process and make it more of an assembly line so we can have deep specialists at every part of the way. And the benefit of that, where a lot of SEO companies, you get an account manager who is on your business, and they're the same person all the way through. But then the challenge is, they're your keyword research person, they're your content person, they're your link building person, they're your strategist. And not everybody's as, some of those things you're going to be good at and some of those things you're not going to be as good at. And so wherever they have strengths, you'll be strong. Wherever you have weaknesses, they'll be weak. And so you have really helped at Helium. You've helped us build this assembly line process where we actually have specialists at every part of the process. Can you talk about for a minute why we've done that and just, as you've been building that, what you've seen results-wise that drives?
Yeah, definitely. There's 2 big reasons that this works so well for us. One is you have your account manager who is looking at your account every day, looking at your keywords, understanding what your process is, what your product really is. Then you have the boots on the ground behind it, that expert that knows every little bit of the SEO and the practice and the technical that needs to go into it. So for example, our keyword research, when an account manager goes in and they might need to do localized or something very niche, and they may overlook several different factors that someone who's in and out of it every single day will spot, how much it might impact trustworthiness, going into the titles and really seeing where those patterns lie, past just they all use the same terms. Well, are they all going to be that informative style? Are you going to hit the definition style or the what is style headers? And you really get an understanding of where is this term in a funnel, so that we can provide that information directly to a client.
No, I think that's really good. And I know personally, as I've seen for clients, the benefit is, the bigger the client campaign gets, the more complicated it is. The issues of those weaknesses, if there are weaknesses, and they, if you have this one account person who's doing the whole thing, if there's gaps in their knowledge, those become amplified when you start working on really big campaigns. Versus in our situation, we can bring in the expert link builder and say, okay, I need this many links and these DR links, and how do we find these? And here's my budget. And, that person does that 40 hours a week, so they're really good at it. And they know how to solve those problems versus, or to your point, the on-page ops tech who knows everything about pagination and everything about the different ways things should be done. And so instead of an account person having to truly be a specialist and expert at every single part of it, they just have to know who to call, right? Or at Helium, essentially.
Yeah, you have that force behind you. You have that supporting. And we're not there just to get the job done. We're also there to help educate. Every time we run across something new, every time we see a niche or maybe a place where an account manager hasn't run a local campaign before, we can be that expert teaching them so that on their next campaign, they can pick it out immediately.
No, I love that. I think it's great. Well, let me ask a couple questions for the people listening because, I think there's some major things that most brands go through, whether they do search marketing or not. Everybody has a website nowadays, right? Or you should if you don't. But there's multiple technical things that brands go through where balls can get dropped and things can get sloppy. So I want to ask you some of those because I think your team, I've seen you guys with processes you developed, you really handle some of these things well. and I think our listeners could benefit from just what you guys have learned and the knowledge you have. So the first is site migrations. So brands will change domain, they'll change name, they'll change URL, they'll get acquired and need to migrate their site to the the new acquiring company, and they're merging them all together or whatever, right? So this happens pretty frequently. I've seen the ball dropped with migrations so many times. So many brands will come to us a year, 6 months after, and say our traffic is down 50%. We don't know why. It's not recovering. What do we do about it? And then we look in and say, oh my gosh, like so many mistakes have been made, right? When doing a site migration, Eric, I'd love to hear, what do you see as the most important things? What's the process you guys use? How do you make sure they go well?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we see is if you do not forecast and show your change to Google, clearly through Search Console, clearly through redirects, not only is it going to hurt your money pages and your big terms on the site, you're also going to take a big hit to your brand authority. You're going to take a big hit to your brand awareness.
Agreed.
When we hit it most of the times, we tackle almost every migration with a 3-phase plan.
Okay.
First, pre-migration, you're looking at what are all the terms you're ranking for, how's your brand seen, you're looking at how is your site built, what are the different pillars, categories, your navigation, and it's real understanding of what is in your site. So when we go to start rebuilding it, whether you're just doing a refresh, rebrand, you're doing a complete site overhaul, or maybe you're merging it with another, you need to know where everything lived before and why it was ranking. If you don't know why it was ranking, you're not going to be able to save those rankings going forward.
And when you say why it was ranking, do you mean the actual content on the pages, the H1s, H2s, the links that are pointing to those pages? What can you define why it's ranking more specifically?
Yeah, breaking down your money terms, your big terms that are driving traffic. You want to look at what's your backlink profile. Are your pages ranking because they have a huge number of backlinks, and where can you use those backlinks? Or sometimes with small pages that aren't very competitive, you can create brand new content or migrate over a portion of that content and rank because you're the authority or you have the right H1 or H2. So every process that we start, we pull all the strong backlinking pages, set those aside because those are ones we need to redirect very, very cautiously. And we take everything that is ranking or has some term in the search results, and we set those aside if they don't have any backlinks, because that's the content that's driving. Now you're going to find a large number of pages on your site that don't have a term ranking, don't have any links, and especially anything that is dated. That is all should be put in a category that you look very closely at. If you don't need it, remove it.
And let's talk about that, because I think one thing I've seen with a lot of brands is, not to bash creatives, but a creative company will come in and say, look, let's redesign this thing. Let's give it a new skin, which is fine. But oftentimes creatives will say, let's have less content, more imagery, right? Which is oftentimes bad for SEO, right? To get rid of content and make it look nice, which I understand some brands are like, we just want to be really visual. That's great. But way below the fold, you need to get some content or your pages aren't going to rank, right? Yeah. But one of the things I've seen, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Eric, is when a company does a site migration or a redesign, they'll oftentimes look at their oldest content, right? Content from 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, old pages, old blogs, old news articles. And oftentimes, those are the ones that they say, we don't need this anymore. It's really old. Let's just have new content. But the oldest content has the most amount of links pointing to it. And so inadvertently, they don't know they're doing this. When they archive and delete all that old content, they 404 huge amounts of their backlinks. And then their authority drops and their rankings drop, and they don't know why. And so what's our process? What do we do differently? What do we recommend to companies that they should do differently when it comes to looking at their old content and archiving old content?
Yeah, definitely. If you have access to a tool like Ahrefs or other crawlers that let you know how many backlinks you have, that's the first thing. I'll always look at what is there and what is existing.
Yes.
If you don't have access to that, one easy tip to go through is the content dated? Does it say content update from 2016 or the best XYZ in 2015? If it's more than 6 years old and it's dated, most of the time that's safe to get rid of. Anything else, we've really seen success with putting them in an archive section. building out a blog or a blog/archive and hosting content there. All the content set aside isn't going to take up your crawl budget. You can no index it. You can set it so that Google can still follow it and see it, but Google knows that all this is older. And then you always have the option, as you see terms drop or traffic drop through Search Console or through analytics, you can bring that content back onto your page.
So when you say a crawl budget, do you mean that Google is limiting how many pages of yours they will crawl in a certain window?
Yeah. So if you think every time Google opens a page, every time Google looks through it, it takes them some time from their server.
Yeah.
Depending on how large your site is, how much authority, how long your site's been around, they budget you a certain time allocation.
Okay.
And that's how much time you get for that week, that day, that month. And if you have 1 million pages to crawl, it's probably only going to see 200,000-300,000, and you're missing out on all the other crawls.
Okay.
But if you no index and you tell Google specifically what pages you want to crawl, you'll see those every month, every week.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Any small update will get you the results quicker.
So, because I think for a lot of SEOs or search experts who are listening, they would say, I don't want to ever no index any pages, right? I'm basically telling Google not to crawl those pages. Mm-hmm. But to your point, if your crawl budget is now smaller than your number of pages, you have to decide what to tell Google not to crawl, or else it may not crawl really important pages because your crawl budget is getting used up on a bunch of your rel canonical, a bunch of stupid small pages that it doesn't need to be reading, but then it's not reading your key money pages or your product pages or service pages. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the fewer pages you can have it crawl, the better, but don't go too far with it. Crawl budgets are usually very large unless you have 100,000 plus pages. You're usually good.
And if you archive the old content and make it no index, will the backlinks that still point to it still pass link juice?
So you do get some. Is going to be greatly diminished.
Okay.
And that's where Search Console is going to be great for seeing what is driving traffic. Search Console will also tell you what type of queries are coming through, so you can see for any individual page. And you can pull a lot of that data and assign it over. If you do a crawl of your own site or if you have a list of your own pages, you can see how many clicks and impressions each gets. If it has some clicks or any impressions, it's probably something that has something good in the content portion or a link.
Okay, so what about, you mentioned 6 years and older, dated content, right? So it's best ERP softwares in 2016, and now it's 2023, and people are like, this is a really old article, right? But let's say that page has 55 referring domains and a UR of 60. So it's a really good page. It's built a bunch of backlinks, right? But then you're like, this content's really old, and so let's archive this thing. But then you're going to lose a lot of link juice. Do you recommend in that case, would it be better just to redirect that to your blog or your homepage, or because as an SEO, losing backlinks feels bad, right? I don't want to lose these backlinks, but also you don't want to advertise a page that's 6 years old, right? At this time, or 7 years old. So what do you do in that scenario?
Two options come to mind immediately. Is one, rewrite the article. If nothing's large has changed, take a lot of that same content, rewrite it, update it, put in the newest, biggest, brightest thing, and repost the content, new date on it, or even better, don't put a date on it, and just straight up redirect your old page.
Smart. So then it's now evergreen. It doesn't age.
Yep.
Okay, interesting. That's smart.
And then number two, if you have a similar page to it already, maybe there is an update that's a 2017 or 2022.
Yeah.
That's even better. Redirect the page over. Losing the content, especially since you already have something similar on your site, isn't going to negatively impact it as much as just removing the page altogether.
Got it. Okay. So two options. Just rewrite it. Would you throw another potential option in there of, instead of rewriting it, maybe let's say that it's something that wouldn't be worth rewriting. Could you just take it and redirect it to the new blog page potentially, where maybe there's not a new blog that's similar you can 301 redirect it to, but could you just send it to the main blog? Is that a bad user experience?
The best thing that I can say is look both in Google Analytics and Search Console. If it's getting traffic, then it's probably not the best to redirect it directly.
Okay.
But if it has had no or sees very, very little traffic, no redirecting it to your blog is perfectly fine.
Okay.
You're not going to get as much of that authority from the links because a more topically relevant page is going to be more related. So you're going to keep more of that authority.
That makes sense. So what are other, this is great so far, other site migration issues that you see? What are mistakes that brands often make, and what should they do differently?
Yeah. Past that phase one of just removing content that's not needed or keeping all of your content that you've ever provided. In our phase two is where we look at the site rebuild. You really want to be cautious when rebuilding your navigation, when rebuilding your dependencies and your directories. So like you're moving from /blog and then the blog name to /knowledge resources / and then getting 5, 6, 7 layers deep.
Right.
The biggest issue that we see is creating a single level site where you don't use those directories at all. You want to split up your content. Your service pages should all live together. You just want to make sure that the build out that you have makes sense as if you were just opening folders on your computer.
Okay, so in terms of when you say a single level site, you mean not having forward slashes? It's just everything is on one main page and like everything clicks down to one site. Are you talking about that?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're looking at. If you look at your URL in the bar, if it goes .com / the article name or .com / your product page, that is seen as everything's on the same level. So each directory or each folder really allows you to group similar pages together. So having a /services is great.
Okay. Oh, versus just like, xyz.com / thing. It's /services / service, next service, next service, next service. So you're breaking your site into buckets that make Google, it makes it much easier for Google to crawl the knowledge base trust, knowledge graph, right? Like they can better crawl and understand where things fit together, the entities on your site. Is that am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, that's perfect. Like these buckets, you want an entity or similar entities in every bucket.
Right.
So if we're looking at the Helium site and we're looking at, well, what are all of our SEO services? So it'd be helium.com / SEO services / keyword research, analytics reporting, organic dashboards, and it's all the things that we offer in one place. So even a user can look at that URL and know immediately that they're under their services or you're in your blog.
Right. No, that's interesting. I mean, I'm just thinking about like organization, right? Like if you had a kitchen pantry and you had 15 shelves, right? And let's say that they were cabinets where you can't see from the outside, and you just put like some spoons in that one, some flour in that one, some sugar in this one, but then also has spoons, and then this one has some flour, and it's like all over the place.
Have you been in my kitchen recently?
Yeah, I mean, I have. Yeah, it's just I have not, but I have a 1-year-old, and so things get placed where you're like, why is that here, right? Or things get put where it's like, what happened to the nail clippers? No idea. Like I'm sure they're in the cabinet somewhere.
They're with the soup.
They're probably with the soup. Yeah, 100% are in the soup. But so then what happens is you have to end up opening every single cabinet to like find the sugar, right? And then you can memorize it and say, oh, the sugar is down to the third. Well, why isn't it labeled sugar? Well, because there's also spoons and there's also nail clippers in there, right? Versus the better way to do your kitchen is to have, here's the drawer for sugar, here's a drawer for flour, here's a drawer for spoons, and everything can be labeled from the outside so you know where to find it. Google works the same way, right? Where it's so much better on your site if you have, brand / services, and then you list out all of your service pages and they're all in that same entity. Because Google then can know all these pages under services are your services. All these pages under locations are your locations, right? Versus just keyword optimized pages that do not follow a rhyme or reason. And you have them all over the place. It's much harder for Google to classify and understand your content. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And let's say you wanted to add some brown sugar. Like you already have a sugar drawer. If you want to add a service, you already have a service section.
Smart.
Google knows what it is immediately.
Makes total sense. Okay, so on the site migrations, one thing, big watch out is make sure you have multiple levels to your site, multiple layers, and the better organized your sitemap is, the more easily Google can crawl and understand your content. So don't have a single level, non-directory based site. Don't the better you have schema and organization, the better, to my understanding.
Yeah.
If I got that correct. What are other watch outs or mistakes clients make when doing site migrations?
Yeah. Once you have know where all your pages are coming from, all your keywords, all your traffic, and you know how you're going to reorganize the site, the last phase, the last part is going to be that final push to get it live. It's setting your site live and what do you have to do. We see so many sites that will keep up their old site, will launch their new site, and never add any redirects or tell Google, hey, this is us.
Yeah.
Google actually has a tool for that. In Google Search Console, if you register or validate on both sites, you can do a domain migration. You go in, you enter the new domain, click ready, and if you have all your redirects set up or you have a sitemap with one-to-one redirects to submit, it handles everything for you. We've seen sites that don't do it will take 4 to 6 months to get any of the brand recognition onto the new site, where when we launched a brand new site a few months ago, we did this day 2 and everything flipped over next day. All their traffic came through. You could see in their analytics where it was live for 1 day, changed over, they had their redirects in place, all their rankings stayed.
So if someone's listening today and doesn't have an SEO company, how could they do that themselves?
So the easiest way is search Google Search Console domain transfer.
Okay.
One of the first things that you open is the development documentation.
Okay.
Very technical side, but the second link down is the link to the actual tool.
Okay.
When you open Search Console, if you've never used it before, if you have Google Analytics, it'll verify automatically. If you don't have it and you do have a dev team, it gives you 1 line of code you put on your site, and within 24 hours, usually around 4 hours, you have your verification.
Nice.
So search for the domain migration, go into the tool, verify, and then type your old domain, new domain.
And then Google does everything else for you.
Yep.
And are they simply passing, are they basically assuming, here's your old domain, here's your new domain, they're now like pressing all their link juice over or their crawlers over, or why does it work so much quicker to do this?
So you're going and telling Google immediately that definitively A equals B.
Okay.
When Google has to learn and assume and make guesses, even though you may be on the same host, you may have the exact same server.
Sure.
It is still trying to guess and understand, where you're just directly telling it.
Right. Okay. So in this case, you're not, like in the old days before domain transfer was in Search Console, we would put up the new site and we would just hope Google figured it out. Right.
Yeah.
Now you can go to Google and say, this is actually my new domain. This is my new site. Please see this new domain as our old domain.
Yeah.
Got it.
And if you think about it as the crawl budget that we were talking about earlier, Google's going to only hit so many pages. So if it's going to take 2-3 days for the crawler to come back to your site,
yeah,
then it may be 2-3 days before it even realizes it. It'll crawl several pages, maybe not your home page. It may not realize that the changes come. It's unlikely, but it can happen. It's still trying to understand and may not be accessing or tying data together yet.
Perfect. Okay, so to summarize for people listening, one of the big mistakes clients make or companies make that do site migrations on their own is they don't go into Search Console and use the domain transfer tool to basically tell Google our new domain is here. So that can massively speed up the indexing and then the crawling and then basically the rankings of the new domain. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all in. If Google doesn't know, Google's not going to change anything.
Right.
The only other thing I recommend during a site migration when you're doing this is when you decide to take down your old site, whether you take down every page but the home and put up a new banner, our new site lives here if you want to keep that trust. Most of the time we just say put a banner on your new site saying we have rebranded. Right. But every page on your site should have a redirect from the old URL to the new URL. Whether that's a one-to-one redirect, every single blog should have a new place to live. If the content was carried over, that's very simple. You know what that new URL is. Right. If we've cut content like we were talking earlier, where do those new links go? We usually recommend directing it to a very similar blog, but if you have hundreds of thousands of blogs, even if you have 10,000 blogs, that is very time intensive. Yes. If it's cut content, you can always use a high level redirect back to just the blog. You can wildcard redirect anything that was /blog to the blog. Just put that at the bottom of your file and you're perfectly fine. Okay. So that anything that's not directly redirected that was under the blog will go back to the new blog. Will redirect to the new blog. Yeah. And I know this is one thing that Helium has done, but
we realize for e-commerce sites that have thousands of pages or thousands of SKUs, this can get really time intensive to do manually. So I know that Paul, who's our co-founder, he developed a tool that can map, right? Him and Kevin built a tool that we have that can map old sitemap to the new sitemap and try to find the best 301 redirects. If you don't have that tool, though, what's the best way to do that? Because to your point, you shouldn't just 301 redirect old domain to new domain, boom, right? That's not a good user experience. You need to do it on a page-by-page level. So what do you recommend for brands that have a lot of pages but don't have Helium's tool?
Yeah, one of the quickest changes is using what's called like a wildcard redirect.
Okay.
That wildcard redirect means that it looks for, let's just use an example of product / coffee cup.
Okay.
If you are very consistent with your name and it's now, say, mugs / coffee cup instead of product, the wildcard redirect will handle it if it exists.
Okay.
If it doesn't exist, adding another layer of all uncaught redirect to blog just lets you redirect everything in one batch.
Okay.
You can rewrite it manually 90% of the time, especially if it's a massive site. The time input isn't worth it.
Yeah, and especially, you kind of mentioned knowing where your traffic's coming from at the very beginning. Do you also recommend looking at individual pages and not worrying about pages that get very little traffic, where it's like, doesn't matter if we redirect this because it gets very little traffic?
Yeah.
Does it make more sense to treat your top 20, 30, 40, 50 pages with more care than your bottom 10,000 pages?
Yeah. We usually run by top 20%.
Okay.
So the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, right.
If the top 20% is driving 8% of traffic, hit that. Just those, you're perfectly fine.
So we have a few minutes left, Eric, and this has been amazing so far. Like, your knowledge is just so good on all this. And I want to pivot to ask you a couple questions on technical site audits, right? These kind of TSAs, right? Or website audits or website technical audits. Like, they have tons of names, right? But you and I have been doing this for years, and we've seen a lot of companies. We've done SEO for a lot of brands, and so many companies love this idea. When we start in the sales process, right? Oh, can you do a technical site audit for me, right? Can you do all the technical stuff? Look into my technical and see how my site speed and DOM and contentful paint and broken links and all that stuff, right? It's kind of like, can you check my car to see what might be broken and what I need, right?
Yeah,
like, come sell me something, right? Now, contrary to popular belief, right, or whatever the right term is, like, you would think that the best thing ever is for us to be like, absolutely, we'd love to build you really technical audits, right? But in recent days, you and Paul, who's our CTO, actually recommend against that for a lot of brands. So why do you if it's so helpful and so in demand, why do you guys recommend against doing this?
Yeah. So before, technical site audits can be anywhere from 8 to 25 hours of work.
Okay.
You can really dig in. You can understand every single piece of the site. But when we look at what we're understanding and what the impact is, we really want to focus on something that moves the needle very quickly and very effectively. The first time we onboard with a site, we need to know, how is the page structure? Do you have H1s? Do you have title tags on everything? Are they unique? Those are parts that move a needle. When you really get into what a lot of companies will call the technical part, and you start looking at pagination, the rel canonicals on every single page, alt text. They're all things that, yes, move the needle.
Site speed.
Site speed's another big one. We see there's a report that we've used for a while that page loads over 2 seconds, you see 80% drop off of visitors.
Right.
But until that 2 seconds, it's very consistent, very low percentage of visitors drop.
Right.
So we're looking at time to fix, if it can be fixed, and impact. So under 2 seconds, you're maintaining 20%, but every page doesn't have an H1. Let's hit that first.
Yeah. So that's really helpful. And one thing that I want to add to that is, to your point, it can take 8 to 25 hours worth of time you're paying for a company like Helium to do this technical site audit. But there's one other issue that I've seen with them, and one reason we recommend against it, not for every brand, but for let's say mid-sized websites that have 50 pages, 50 or 100 pages. They have some rankings. When we have done the technical site audits and we get 25 hours into it and we get a 40-page report, what we have noticed can happen too is we deliver this report to a client and they look at this and they say, oh my gosh, we need to fix all these things, right? But then oftentimes, the time, contentful paint, right? Like time to, or is it time to first
bite?
Time to first bite. There's contentful paint. There's DOM. We could spend, 3 months improving their time to first bite from, whatever it is, right? 2 minutes to 1 minute, or 2 seconds to 1 second. And we will improve their site dwell time and conversion rate by almost nothing, right? But we could spend months on it. In exact order. Let's say that they have H1s, H2s, and they have no H3s. And we're like, you really should have H3s. But then working with our dev team takes us months to get that implemented. In the same time frame, though, we're not doing the truly most important thing for SEO, which is better content, longer content, more content, better links, more links. And so oftentimes the problem brands will have is, let's say you'll use a car analogy, right? 2 of your cylinders are broken in your car, right? You have a V8 that's firing on only 6 cylinders. That's a major problem. But we're talking to you about, you have a little bit of rust on the tailpipe. This one tire is a little wobbly, and the seatbelts don't work back here. And then we spend all the time fixing that, and then you go to drag race and the car explodes. You're like, what happened? Well, the engine part was way more important than all this other stuff. Is that a good analogy?
Yep. Priority. It's always about priority and what you're doing. And we use an ICE score, which is
what does that mean?
Yeah. So we have a score that we run across that looks at impact, confidence, and ease of implementation. And
like
that third one's a big one. So we call it the ICE score. It's commonly known as the ICE score.
Yeah.
If it has a very high impact and we're very confident in it, then ease of implementation is weighted a little bit less, or we take it a little less. If we're looking at 2 different pieces that have the same impact and confidence, then that ease of implementation, like you were saying, we want to get stuff that moves, that we can get in, and that is important.
I'm writing this down because that's I didn't know about ICE, and I really like that. It's what can we implement?
Importance.
Oh, so okay. Let me go back in because I'm writing this down. I really like this. I could use this in sales, right? Yeah. So it's importance.
Importance.
How important is this?
Confidence. Or how confident are we going to that this has an impact? And ease of implementation.
Ease of implementation. Okay.
So the last one is a little bit flipped because if it was difficulty, a high ICE score means we do it quickly. A low ICE score means we don't. So if we have one factor that's flipped, that's why it's ease of implementation versus difficulty.
So important. So ICE score, importance is how important would it be to fix this? So back to the rust in the tailpipe, ICE score high, right? Or ICE score would be low because importance very low. Confidence in fixing it, yes. Ease of fixing it, yes. But importance is very low.
Yeah.
Right. But can we rebuild the whole broken motor? Right, then it's like importance very high, confidence somewhat, and like ease not easy, right?
Yep.
But it's very important, right? So the ICE score allows you to make the decision on what is worth fixing first.
Yep.
In other words,
yeah, and we usually
really
rate
like
importance about twice as heavy as everything else in there.
I was gonna say because there has to be a weighting score, right? Of like so importance is twice the weight, and so even if it's much harder to fix, the 2 broken cylinders, it's more important than the tailpipe and all the other ones combined. So you should try to fix it first, even if it's harder.
Yep.
Got it. So back to the ICE score and then thinking through these technical site audits. So kind of one of the points we're arriving at here is brands should look at the ICE score first when looking at technical site audit. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing a technical site audit, but it's knowing what to fix when and what's important. And from what I'm hearing from you and what I've also seen that I would pass along is that brands will oftentimes get so focused on the details in the technical site audit that they'll stop focusing on create a lot of content, good quality content that follows EEAT, right? Expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness. So they don't focus on that. They don't focus on link building. They fix all these technical issues, and their site barely increases in ranking. And it's because the technical issues or things across the whole site that should be improved, but fixing those in and of themselves will not improve your site. Well, it'll improve your site, but it won't improve your SEO and your rankings.
And this is where it always becomes difficult, is there's user experience and there's crawler experience, or the Google's experience on the site. Both are very important. And really, when it comes down to it, in a technical site audit, you should always be looking at internal links. Are they broken? Is there an H1 on every page that is unique? Broken or lost backlinks.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the big three that are going to move the needle every single time. If it's anything outside of that, take a second to see, are one of those three there that we should prioritize first.
No, that's great. So as we kind of wrap up through this idea, nothing wrong with technical site audits. Mm-hmm. They can be good, but they can take a lot of time to do, and they can get you focused on the wrong things that don't actually drive SEO results. But where they are really helpful is fixing the Google's crawler experience, making the crawler experience better. But it's usually not going to fix a huge amount of the actual ranking issues, because ranking issues many times are caused by not the right content, not enough links.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
You can always look at it as, is your foundation strong? Do you have the three most important? Is your site built? If you have a good foundation, build that skyscraper.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere if you don't have a building.
Totally. Well, Eric, we're out of time now, so thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And if people wanted to reach out, if they, people listening had extra questions, they wanted to ping you about ICE scores, or what should be in my technical site audit, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. If people are interested or have questions, reach out to me. It's eric.kelly, eric.kelly at helium-seo.com.
Eric, thanks for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate your time and your expertise. I know I learned something today, so I hope the other people listening today as well. Hey guys, thanks for listening. This has been the It's All Just Marketing podcast with your host, Tim Warren. Today we had Eric Kelly on the show, and we talked about technical site audits and website migrations and the things to avoid. We look forward to seeing you guys on the next show.